Morning, everybody. Thank you once again for joining us. This is AJOL's last webinar of the year. And we think we have had quite a successful season, and we are very excited for our final one to welcome 3 members of Crossref, the organization that does the DOIs, which we'll be speaking about today. So basically what's going to happen is I will do a brief slideshow on how DOIs work at AJOL and what to do if you want an AJOL DOI, and then I will hand over to Ginny, Marina, and Cora for more information on DOIs and Crossref. I believe that is what's happening. All right, so as always, why are you not responding? Okay, as always, we will be putting everything on YouTube later on, and we will also disseminate the slides that will probably all be early next week. If you have a colleague or a student or somebody that you think, or anybody you know that might benefit from any of our webinars, they all are on our YouTube channel. And of course, our webinars are open to anybody who has the link. So anybody who'd like to come, you are absolutely welcome. We are a nonprofit. We believe the more the merrier, and that we are all going to do this together. We will have another webinar series next year, so watch the space. But for now, let us continue with this week's topic, which is digital object identifiers, what they are, what they enable, and how they make your journal more visible. I'm going to go through some nuts and bolts. But as always, we thank CEDA for their generous financial support and Crossref for participating with us today. Right, so usually when you get a DOI, which is a form of persistent identifier, publishers pay Crossref a fee of about $1. However, Crossref very kindly has granted AJOL a discounted fee, and we pay for the registration of the DOIs on behalf of our partner journals. So if you are on AJOL and you want DOIs, they are free to you. We cover that cost. This is a major financial saving for smaller journals, particularly ones that may not be particularly well staffed or particularly well resourced. We understand that many of our partners are standalones or are running very much a one-man band sort of situation. We believe that everybody should have access, and therefore this arrangement exists to help particularly smaller journals. Even if you're a fairly large journal, do get in touch. So how do you get an AJOL DOI? Dead simple, very, very simple. Ask us for one. Send your requests for to membership of AJOL to applications@ajol.info. You will reach me. I am Kylie. If you would like your application followed up on, if I haven't processed you yet, please do feel free to email me as well. I apologize from the bottom of my heart for how long it takes. We only have 6 staff. We did a major website upgrade this year. I get 8 or 9 new applications a week. It is quite a lengthy process, quite detailed. It takes me a long time. I am sorry. If you would like to see where you are, do let me know. When your assessment is eventually complete, I will email you with your results. And at that point, you let me know that you want DOIs through AJOL, because that is something that we enable during our journal setup or our onboarding process. I will then tell my colleagues, Kate and Veda, that you would like an AJOL DOI. And when they do the next step, when you are trained to use our backend, then that is when DOIs are sort of built into the process for you. It's not complicated for you at all. We do all the fiddly bits in the back end. And Kate will explain the entire DOI process in detail by email so that you have a written document that explains it. Once your journal, oh hell, sorry, I bumped my mouse. Once your journal issue is finalized, for example, say you've been onboarded and we're uploading your content, and you have your new issue coming out, once that is finalized and you have your table of contents, send it to us at info@ajol.info as an editable Word document. AJOL staff will then generate a DOI for each article and table of contents. We use a pattern, which I will explain shortly. Then we send that back to you. And once you've got an idea of how the process works, it's very simple. Once you know how it works, basically you can assign your own. Feel free to send them to us to check though. We can correct them later. It is a bit of a process, so it's much easier to get them, make sure we have them completely right before we activate them. Also, I have noticed in the process of activating DOIs that some journals do not like to use a sequential system, for example, the AJOL in-house system, the first article in an issue will be DOI 1, the second one's DOI 2, the third is DOI 3, etc. I have noticed that some journals prefer to have basically random numbers. That's fine, as long as they are sequential. So your first article, should be, say, 191. Your second one can be 203, but should not be 189. However, we far prefer it if you just use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As you will see shortly, the system that we use is set up that we do have enough differentiation. So you won't end up with a duplicate DOI if you just use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It can't happen. It's built. The system is designed to render that impossible. Right. So once the DOIs are finalized, we send them to you and you insert them into the full text articles. We publish the new issue, and then you publish your issue, rather, sorry, and then you email us the final full text PDFs with the DOIs on them, or you upload it yourself, depending on what your particular arrangement is. Then we double check that they're correct. Once the issue is online, if you do your own uploading, let us know, and then we process them through our backend. I have in previous years shown everyone the backend. I am not doing this year because it is just unnecessarily complicated, and so no point really. If you would like to see our backend, feel free to look up the video of last year's presentation on our YouTube channel. This process of activating in the backend often works as a second check to see whether articles are formatted correctly, whether the PDFs open. That's a problem we run into from time to time. Please feel free to check our content uploading webinar, which is also on our YouTube channel. And we pick up any issues such as inadvertent duplication, a wrong issue number, errors, and that kind of thing. So there are multiple checks and balances. I'm just noticing some questions coming in the webinar chat. If you could please pop your questions into the Q&A box. I'm so sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier. If you have questions, into the Q&A, and we will deal with them at the end. Right. And then once we have processed them through our backend, Crossref activates them, usually within less than an hour, and the DOIs are live. They work as persistent links, and you can always locate the article using that DOI. Please note, however, it's important to me personally and to AJOL as a whole that we take as many steps as possible to get DOIs correct before we activate them. I've said it, I will repeat that we can fix them afterwards. It is quite a tedious process. We prefer to get them right beforehand. If you do not have DOIs, not everything has a DOI. You will have noticed this. Some of the people here today are from journals who do not use DOIs. We would encourage you to get a DOI. It is just much safer and a much more trackable system. We're all about tracking and making things sort of like infinitely locatable on the internet, and that is what a DOI basically does. And we encourage people to use DOIs in their referencing systems as well. So please take a look at your author guidelines, and if you have not asked your authors to reference the DOIs of articles that they reference, please add that. Mulugeta, if you have a question, could you please put it in the Q&A box? This is basically what a DOI looks like. This is the anatomy of an AJOL DOI. http://dx:/DOI.org is the resolver service. 10.4314 is AJOL's unique prefix, and your journal's unique prefix is usually the journal path that you use on AJOL. So this is for the Sokoto Journal of Veterinary Science, so the SOC JVS as it is known on AJOL. Followed by the volume, which is volume 21, issue, which is issue 2, and article number, the first article. As you will see, this is the first article of the second issue of the 21st volume of that journal. You can read them backwards. It is also, if you look at DOIs for long enough, you can tell exactly which article you're looking at without even seeing the title. There it is. You see the orange arrow. There it is on the finalized PDF. And here it is on our journal page, as you see there at the bottom. And there it is on our on the article page. I apologize for the HTML that you see here indicating italics in this title. It is an ongoing bug that we're experiencing with after our upgrade. We are in the process of sorting it out. It doesn't affect the PDFs themselves. Right. I am going very fast. I apologize. So what do we need from you? Good communication. Please tell us when you need your DOI set up, or when you have a new issue, or when the issue is ready for activation. Let us know. As I've said, there are only 6 of us, and there are over 700 journals on AJOL. So we need to be told when things are happening. We do not have the staff power to monitor. So let us know. Communication is key. Also, patience, please. If you upload your own content, it is a lot faster for you. My colleague Kate can assist you with that. If you email her at info@ajol.info, Kate will be able to train you in your own uploading. It does give you a lot more power over what you would like to, your timing, if you upload your own content. However, if we upload for you, also totally cool, not a problem. And we can only upload what you give us, so please make sure that your metadata is correct. Author names, article titles, and so on. I have noticed occasionally that journals will upload with an abbreviated or a truncated title. Please don't do that. We need the whole title if possible. If your authors decide to change a name, let us know, because it's a process. So please be as correct as possible as you can before sending it on to us. And that's basically it from me. I will now hand over to the Crossref staff.
Thank you very much, Kylie. Thanks for that. Very good introduction. I am Ginny Hendricks. I work at Crossref, and I'm based in London in the UK. It's really nice to be able to talk to you all today, because AJOL has been a partner with Crossref for at least a decade, I think. And it's really grown, and it's nice to have the opportunity to collaborate live on a webinar. So I'm just going to pull up my slides here and start sharing. So I am the Director of Community at Crossref. So that involves membership, technical support, community engagement and communications. And I'm on the board of directors, so I'm involved in the governance and sustainability of Crossref. So let me share screen. Today, we'll do an introduction to Crossref. Who are we? We will definitely talk about digital object identifiers, DOIs, so continuing what Kylie has introduced us to. I'll talk a little about open infrastructure in general, and then we'll go a little bit around what Crossref and AJOL together can enable beyond registering DOIs. So we'll talk about metadata and relationships, and a little bit about Crossref and our membership. And I will hand off at some point to my colleague, Cora Courgette, who is also based in the UK currently, and is our head of community engagement and communications. Okay, so let's get started. Our vision, and a vision is always a shared community thing. So hopefully people will recognize this as something that we all support in the scholarly communications community. So we are looking towards a rich and reusable open network of relationships, connecting research organizations, people, things like journal articles, and actions like citation. So a scholarly record that the global community can build on forever for the benefit of society. And our role in achieving that vision is to make those research objects easy to find, cite, to link, to assess, and to reuse. We're a not-for-profit membership organisation, and we exist to make scholarly communications better. So we call ourselves an infrastructure, an open scholarly infrastructure, and the scale of Crossref has really surpassed the original founders' expectations, I think. So we were first set up in the year 2000, so 23, coming up to 24 years ago. And we had 12 publishers, some that don't exist anymore, like Academic Press. So some have sort of merged into some of the larger publishers, the American Academy for the Advancement of Sciences and Oxford University Press and publishers like that, because they wanted a neutral body through which to exchange links between their references on their articles. And they wanted to do that without having to have bilateral linking agreements in place with each other. And what we've seen is that system really take off and become the norm and the standard in scholarly communications. Pretty much everything has a DOI, should have a DOI and could have a DOI, with a caveat of there's always more to there's always more to include. And we have quite a lot of efforts trying to make sure that we're accessible to everybody. But right now we have coming up to 20,000 organizational members in Crossref from 152 countries, and lots of countries in Africa are actually part of our fastest growing countries, and we're certainly seeing new members join from Africa all the time. Nowadays, 40% of our members identify as institution or university based, which is a change from the traditional publishers that that originally founded Crossref. It's still predominantly journal content, so we have 150 million records, so that's 150 million articles or book chapters or data sets or blog posts or preprints that have a DOI with Crossref and are therefore, in the global citation network, which is completely open and reusable for anyone to use. And we know that thousands of systems use our API, and we see 1.2 billion queries every month. And that's doubled in the last 5 years. So a lot of people are not just using Crossref to register DOIs for content that they have published, but also there's lots of systems out there relying on the Crossref infrastructure to retrieve those DOIs and the metadata associated with them. And it's all sorts of systems that you might imagine. So Dimensions, Scopus, Web of Science, those big databases, small academic projects, bibliometrics groups and things like that. The DOIs themselves are resolved, and a resolution is when a DOI is clicked on or followed by a machine. And we also see over 1 billion of those interactions every month with a Crossref DOI. A little bit on cost. We're about a $12 million organization. And we have 49 staff, which is our biggest cost, salary and benefits and support and pensions for our staff. And we also spend a lot on data storage and processing of all of this metadata and enabling people to register DOIs and retrieve them. So we're projecting in 2024 a budget of $1.25 million on a combination of data center, Amazon Web Services, and so cloud storage and API processing as well. As well as our members, we have sponsor organizations, 150 around the world, and we have 50 or so individual ambassadors as well. And we're always looking for more people to connect their communities with the possibilities of Crossref. So that's a little bit about the scale of who we are. And this, as I mentioned, we have 49 staff. This is only, I think, 38 of us who were able to meet for the first time, many people for the first time ever. I think about half of this group had never met each other before, because we've grown quite a lot in staff just in the last 5, 6, 7 years. And this was us just north of Barcelona in Spain in June. Which was great. We went on boat trips, and clearly we got t-shirts made with origami birds, which was lovely. Okay, so what is our current strategic agenda? I've talked about the mission and the vision. We have, I guess, 4 pillars. We want to contribute to an environment where the community identifies and co-creates solutions for broad benefit. So we have a research and development team, and we are involved in a lot of other community initiatives for open science, for open metadata, for other persistent identifiers that we support, like ORCID and RAW for affiliations. Secondly, that top right in red, we aim to be a sustainable source of complete, open and global scholarly metadata and relationships. So we have lots of initiatives and projects on that aim to meet that goal of building Crossref as a complete and open scholarly source of metadata about scholarship. We want to be publicly accountable to the principles of open scholarly infrastructure, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in a few slides. And lastly, we want to foster a strong team, because we know that for our system to be reliable, it needs committed people who are able to contribute to the vision and, you know, be happy doing so. Okay, so I think we're all committed to open science and a more open system of scholarship, and enabling researchers to be able to communicate openly with each other, quickly with each other, and build on each other's work. So open science needs a lot of other opens. Open metadata, we'll talk about open infrastructure, and we'll talk about open governance as well. So I mentioned the principles of open scholarly infrastructure. And infrastructure isn't a tool or a service. It's sort of a foundational underlying system. And I don't know if you can hear the beeping of my fridge going on and off as my electricity flickers in and out. But usually you think of infrastructure as the kind of utilities and services that we rely on that actually are very invisible to us until they don't work. So yeah. Last week we had no water. This week we're struggling with electricity in London in the UK. So what can we do as a community? The equivalent of open scholarly infrastructure in scholarly communications is Crossref and persistent identifiers and standards, and the kind of the underlying ways that support the digital communication of knowledge. So these are 16 principles that were actually proposed in 2015, so quite some time ago. And it's only really in the last few years, I think it was 2020, when the Crossref board discussed these and agreed to commit to them. And we wrote and published a self-assessment about how we're doing towards meeting these 16 principles. And we don't meet all of them as yet. They're grouped around governance, sustainability, and insurance. Insurance being the sort of the things that we can put in place so that if something fails at Crossref, the community can take data, take software, take staff policies and operational materials, and recreate something in if needed, if Crossref turns evil or needs to be closed down for any reason. So it's all about kind of safeguarding things for the future, and about holding ourselves to account for truly transparent operations and broad governance as well. And these are some of the other organisations alongside Crossref that have signed up to the POSI principles. So you'll see the Directory of Open Access Journals, DOAJ, DataCite, Europe PMC, our research that runs the Open Alex service, and many others I'm sure will be recognised there. Okay, now to that's all about Crossref and why we call ourselves an infrastructure. So now to the bit more of the nuts and bolts. What are DOIs and what do we mean by metadata? So first, the definition of metadata, and I really like this one, that metadata is communication. It allows us to describe and define an item, not just identify it. So it can define relationships, it can define actions, it can define ownership, and it can it can travel through time as well to future generations. So as things become a lot more digital, a lot more fluid in scholarly communications, metadata is becoming even more important, so that it can be, the interactions can be followed, things can be found, linked to, and reused. And we call ourselves a community, scholarly communications industry. So metadata as communication really underpins all of that effort. So digital object identifiers are pretty core to metadata and to Crossref. We are a member of the DOI Foundation that was set up at the end of the 90s, 1998 or 1999, and Crossref was the first agency to join that nonprofit, and we are the largest and the most global. There's 11 other DOI registration agencies in the scholarly space. Most of them look after a particular part of the world, and they do things beyond research. So primary school materials, textbook, government materials, and things like that. The idea is that they are unique. That is kind of the point, that it should locate an object on the internet or information about that object forever. And that's the persistent bit. And they should be actionable. So they're not just an identifier, so not just a number or a string, but actually as a link, they are resolvable. So actionable, clickable. You should expect to be led somewhere sensible when you click a DOI. So a DOI is an element of metadata itself, and it's a container for a record of metadata about an object. And when I say object, I mean, like in this case, most of us are journal publishers, so articles are pretty much what we're talking about here. And so that can improve discoverability, and it gives some context about the work, and it allows other people to use and find it. There are other persistent identifiers that Crossref supports. I mentioned a couple of them. There's ORCID, which is for contributors and authors, and ROR, ROR, is the research organizations registry of identifiers for research performing organizations and research funding organizations. So on a later webinar, I'm sure we can talk about those others as well. Metadata and relationships that I've mentioned a little bit, so a bit more about that. It can help us establish that something exists. So if there is a DOI record and some metadata, including a title, for example, that confirms that something exists in the world. Somebody has cared enough about it to register it in the global system, because they think other people will find it useful. So it also provides information about an object or entity. So that could be an abstract in the article case, and it could be about authors. It could include other identifiers. It can also include information about the objects and how they interact with each other. So you can use relationship metadata to connect an article to its underlying data set. References are the most common type of relationship that we can think of with articles, but there are also other things like versions, translations, and we want to capture all of that in Crossref, and that's already possible. And we can see the owner or the steward of that article. So who's asserting this information about that object is really important, so you can sort of establish provenance. And we're also increasingly including in metadata things that we would have previously thought of as just administrative, so things just internal to our membership database at Crossref. So who's paying Crossref, how much are they paying, who's hosting the content, which tools are they using, and things like that. And that's all adds context to the players that are maintaining this system through Crossref. The Metadata 2020 initiative, which is sort of wrapped up now, but for about 3 or 4 years, there were a group of volunteers looking at metadata principles and practices, and they came up with these 4 principles. So it should be compatible, complete, credible, and curated. Why should we care about DOIs and metadata? I sort of linked our efforts to open science, and then more specifically, there are a number of areas. The biggest one, actually, that isn't on this slide is probably just evidence. We need to gather, the more metadata we have, the more evidence we have for the trustworthiness of the work and the organizations behind the work, or the people behind the work. So provenance information like ownership, but also funding information can really help users assess whether they want to trust this if they know who funded the research. So we capture all of that within the DOI record. Reproducibility, we want to capture relationships between data, software, protocols, so that things can be, research can be reused and hopefully verified or refuted. The metadata is also used for assessments. Lots of countries have research assessment activities, and they use metadata to make quite serious decisions about, you know, obviously we know there are university rankings and they're a bit, you know, problematic, but some quite big decisions about where funding is going, funding of universities, funding of certain scientific programs across regions like the African Union, and of course for discoverability. And I think discoverability is the main reason that people get involved with DOIs and metadata, is because they kind of want their stuff to be seen and read, and they want credit for it. And the more metadata there is, the more entry points there are to find the work. So it's that sort of visibility benefit. Yeah, so you might be thinking, like, what do you mean by actual metadata? Be specific, Ginny. So there's very basic types of metadata, and that is the title of the article, the dates it was published, things like author names. The abstract is pretty important. That's really highly used downstream by other systems for text mining and things like that. Full text URLs. We'll go into a couple of these services, but we also collect information about updates. That is normal. Corrections to the literature should be a habitual part of science, and retractions as well. This is science correcting itself. That's really important. Crossref recently acquired the Retraction Watch database of about 50,000 papers that have been flagged for concern or have been retracted. And that's now, it's not yet within the Crossref API, but it is available openly through Crossref as a CSV file, and we plan to integrate it. But previously that information was paid for only, and you had to have a subscription to get access to these flagged articles through Retraction Watch. So we have an agreement with them now to open it up through Crossref, and plans to integrate it, as I said. I've mentioned quite a lot about relationships, but yeah, versions, translations, data, references, citation, those are all relationships between articles and other objects. And yeah, sometimes we have subject specific things. So if it's a biomedical journal, consider including clinical trial information. And we also want award numbers. Crossref has funding members now that are registering grant DOIs for their research grants, and we want those to be linked to the outputs from the funders' support as well, and other identifiers like orchids and wars I've mentioned. Okay. what a phrase that we use to kind of describe this this whole environment is the research nexus. And it's not only our vision to have all of these sort of actions and objects and relationships connected, it's also the way that publishing is going. So it's evolving to provide more context. That final article isn't the final outcome anymore. Things happen to it. It might be reused, it might be used, it might be cited, it might be retracted. And so this is a nice diagram from the OCLC research group that sort of describes, depicts like there might be a process and an outcome, but there's also methods, there's discussion, there's interaction, there's comments, there's peer review, of course, and there may be revisions and, as I've said, translations and other versions in the future, and we are trying to capture all of that. And this is our version in the Crossref world, or you could say the persistent identifier world, of trying to capture that. So we have probably a fairly familiar cyclical depiction of this, from funding, creating and ideating around the research itself, posting or publishing it, responding and correcting and retracting, and then using. So it's a fairly kind of cyclical process. And then within those, we've got quite specific actions and relationships that we're either already capturing or would like to in future. And in that green bubble on the left, that's really sort of aspirational, I would say. It's a sort of, let's imagine if we could gather metadata that told us that this article had been successfully reproduced, or the outcomes or the data had been successfully verified by another research group. Being able to capture that in future is really exciting, but it's just a possibility at the moment, a figment of my imagination. Okay, so just to explain a little bit more about the research nexus, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Cora now, who will dig into it a little bit further. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ginny. So yes, Ginny explained how what the DOIs are and what metadata is, and now the question is, how is it all appearing in the infrastructure that we covered? So I think some of you are familiar with the process that I think Kylie has explained before for AJOL. So just a very quick overview. There are different ways of registering your content with Crossref, and different organizations have different preferences. Different.
Cora, I think you might want to share your screen.
Sorry.
Unless you want me to.
No, yeah, sorry. I'm just going to do it now. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Share it. Yep. So you should see a couple of bullet points now, or 3 bullet points rather than a couple.
It's coming. It's just loading ...
All right. Okay, well, I can speak to it anyway, because all it displays is that there are different ways of registering content, as I mentioned, and it will depend on a number of things. Some organizations prefer different ways of doing it. Some have different volumes, and therefore, depending on the number of articles you're publishing, you may not want to type each of them by hand if you have a way of doing it more digitally. And on the other hand, you might not system to do things digitally, everything for you, if your publishing is of a smaller volume, so you have less articles. So as I said, different organizations use different things. OJS Crossref plugin is relatively popular because many journals or many members that are in Crossref use OJS, but obviously not all. We also have a kind of a web deposit form, which is a helper tool that allows people to go through the website and put information about the article into a form, and then hit submit, and then that kind of allows us to register the content and register the metadata, and it generates the DOI for you. Then we also have the upload of XML files directly, because all of that data eventually, whether it's deposited through the web deposit form or through OJS plugin or anything else, it will end up being in XML format and to be added to our database. So once you have an article that or a book chapter or any other type of content that you want to that you register a DOI for, we encourage our members to do what we call reference linking, and that enables the user, so the reader of said work or output, to take a look and click through the references list to see some of the works that have been, background that give background to the article that they have just been reading. And this is the example of that in action. So basically, when submitting references, when submitting your article to Crossref, add those references in. Ginny? Oh, okay. And then this is how it appears in the final document. So that, as you can see, there are clickable DOI links to each of those pieces of content. Now, another thing that is kind of enabled by by having references in the system is that you can, provided that other people offer references to the works that have included your article in it, and so that where your article has been cited within their metadata, then Crossref is able to gather that information and provide information about the citations of the work that you have published in other places. And this is again an example. So this publisher is using the cited by service, which, by the way, we've made openly available for everybody this year. Before, we used to have some checks in place about your own participation in the Research Nexus, but we decided this year that everybody should be able to participate in the cited by service. And you can see here a number of citations on the right-hand side for the article in question. The other thing is...
Cora, sorry to interfere. We can't see your screen still, and you keep referring to it. So if we could just try, maybe Jenny could try sharing her screen instead.
Okay, I'll go back a few slides. Not sure why.
Thanks so much. It just still says loading.
Okay. Huh.
Sorry,
I think if you unshare and reshare, maybe it'll kick back in.
Let's try again. Yeah. I must say it's not happened to me in a long time, so I was not preparing for that. Okay, well, let's try it again.
Otherwise, I can.
It says now that your screen sharing is paused. Is that something that was done from my end?
We can definitely see your screen. It's just that the slides weren't displaying. We could see your browser window.
Oh.
Not so much now, though.
Okay, let's try it again. I'm sorry about this. Okay, this is what I want to share, so why don't we try it?
Aha!
Is it working this time?
Turn it off and turn it on again. That always works, yeah.
Yeah,
if you hit slideshow, then we should be back. Oh, this is the bit that didn't work.
It is when I'm hitting the slideshow that
it's the slideshow.
You know what? I am going to just not use the slideshow button. That, I think, if that resolves the issue, then it's relatively easy to deal with, right? I'll just deal with that. I'll just make the slides a bit bigger.
But you have unshared your screen though.
Yeah, I know, because I needed to come out of the unhelpful full screen mode. Okay. So this is not, well, you'll have a bit of a spoiler alert on the side, that I hope you will able to live with that.
That's great, okay. Thank you.
Sorry about that. And so yes, well, as I said, those are the different ways in which you can register content with us. Here is about reference linking. So I've mentioned this is a service where when you register your article, let's say, give it for an example's sake, article as an example, I think people are familiar with. So when you register an article for a DOI, you can add the references links to it. And as a result, the reader is therefore able to go on and click on those DOIs links in your references to go and explore the works that have been in the background of the one that they have just read. Another service enabled by the references metadata being available is the cited by option, where basically we are able to query the metadata of the articles that are citing your publication, and as a result, we're able to display the number of those citations, as you can see in an example here. Crossmark is another service that kind of uses the metadata. Obviously, all of those tools are there to help the community provide information and metadata about the articles, so that they equip the community at large and the reader of the article in specific with information about how that work has come to be. And Crossmark is an interesting one because it is about the kind of ongoing life of the article or book or other publications, but particularly articles. Because obviously literature, as Ginny mentioned, it changes over time. There can be a correction, there could even be a retraction. And so the reader is obviously better equipped to know how to approach that article if they are aware of those updates, or there could be a new version of the work as well. And so this specific icon, check for updates, allows people to have a look. This is an example again. For participating publisher, you can see that there is a check for updates option, and the reader can click that and see if there has been any changes to that piece of work over time. Similarity check. I wonder if people here are familiar with it, but it is a piece of software provided by an external organization to us, Authenticate. And it allows for documents, for example, submitted articles, to be checked for similarity, as the title says, with the documents that have been published in the past. Now, editors, for example, use this tool to check for plagiarism. But of course, this is not a completely automatic process, and we do encourage scholars to take a look in the context and see if the high level of similarity to an existing work really substantiates kind of fraudulent activity. So is it plagiarism, or is it, for example, a new version of a potential preprint or something that has been stored in a university repository or something like that, which has not been a published work before. So as you can see, there is a degree of the human oversight that needs to be provided with the similarity check service, but it is very useful. Many organizations appreciate the opportunity to be able to access that at a kind of lower prices through Crossref, thanks to the fact that our members do contribute with their content as well to the Authenticate tool, making it possible to make those kind of comparisons on a larger scale. And then you can find out more information about building Research Nexus on our website. There will be some links at the end as well. And I believe that those slides will be shared, so you'll be able to click through the links to see that. About the services and tools that we provide, there has been a number of videos created a little while ago, and as you can see, they're available in different languages, so you can see them in English, but also in French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. So if any of those you would find more easy to consume, then obviously I encourage you to take a look. And we have many webinar recordings about different tools and activities and initiatives of Crossref that you can take a look at as well. And I definitely encourage you to come to our forum and discuss with us anything metadata related that you'd like to either know more about or share some of your own insights. So obviously there are tools to build the research nexus, which I've mentioned, but the building is the one side of the process. There's no point in making things available, openly accessible, if nobody uses them. And so there are also tools for exploring the research nexus. So basically, we provide open access to all that data that is being registered with Crossref. And so we also offer tools for people to be able to explore that. There is interface for people, basically the metadata search and some query tools, that basically you can type things in them, and they will display, for example, content related with a specific DOI. They will display specific links to DOIs that you're interested in, or content with not content itself, sorry, the links to content that is associated with the DOIs that you are searching for. Most of the APIs is being used by machines, I think, and that is where most of the use comes at kind of larger volumes. And so we have a number of those different services there, but the REST API being the main one. I'll give a bit more oversight about that. And finally, each year we make a public data file available as well, which contains the entirety of metadata corpus that has been deposited with us by that date. So here is how this metadata search works. As you can see, you can just type in whether it's an author or DOI or ORCID that you're interested in, and it will display a range of results for you. Then on the slightly more aggregated way, the metadata API or the REST API, you can access via the Swagger, the documentation there you can access via Swagger here with the link. We have different libraries available for whichever language you might be using. As you can see, there is 6 actually different options. And then there is we encourage polite use of our queries, which basically means that if you put in your email in the query, and I will show the example of how that works in 2 slides down, then it will work a little faster. And it also means that if there are any technical issues, then we're able to contact you back. I think we do forget your email. So basically we delete that email information after I think 3 months. And it's not being used for any marketing purposes, if that is your worry. Okay, so good to remember about the REST API. All metadata is openly available, can be reused without restriction. And there are 3 access levels to the API. It is public, so you can use it anonymously. You can use it with a polite public version where you include the mail to parameter and with all the caveats that I've just mentioned. And then there is also a plus service for people using it at much bigger scale and not much bigger, maybe I should say, just at large volumes. They often require, that could potentially mean that they require a different capacity of the system, and therefore we offer that kind of as a paid service where we provide a different way of accessing the same metadata. So how does it work? You can see here a little query cut into smaller bits to show what it includes. The protocol and host shows that this is indeed a Crossref API. The endpoint basically is what is it that you're searching for, and then you can include the parameters of that search as well. And the final bit is the polite option where you can include your mail to and email detail that allows you to access the things a bit faster. And this is the polite use of the service. You can go and look at our documentation and see that there are examples of different queries, with different basic queries that you can construct. And then again, I invite you to kind of go to the api-crossref.org, and you can scroll down and click on different get options. Get just basically means that you tell the computer to find that information for you in our database. And you can check, for example, fund the organization as it was in the example before. And I think at this point, I hand over to Ginny.
Thank you. Yes. This, I'm sure, will be seamless again. Right. We are here. Slideshow. Can everybody see?
Yes.
Marvelous. Okay. I think, yeah, we've gone into quite some detail about the technical, metadata retrieval and some of the other services. And I wanted to just bring it back to Crossref and working with AJOL and members. A little, I guess I wouldn't say recap, but even an introduction to the kind of benefits of working with Crossref. So help to co-create this research nexus that Cora has just described. You're contributing to ensuring the persistence of content over time. There is greater discoverability if the item is in Crossref with a DOI. It's more likely to be found, cited, used by others because Crossref is the largest, most global. I think it's maybe 93% of all DOIs that are used are Crossrefs. So that network is very big. And there's no need to duplicate the information for multiple parties. The metadata is used, as we said, by thousands of other systems in the ecosystem. You have access to the tools that some of which Cora just described to support research integrity. So the crossmark status buttons and text-based plagiarism checking. You also have a vote in our board election. Now, AJOL is the member of Crossref. So AJOL has been on our board in the past, which was fantastic. We'd love to see more interaction like that. Certainly, I think we have one board member from Africa, and we'd love to see more. So if you have a direct membership with Crossref, you certainly can vote in board elections. So really participating in the governance of this global infrastructure is important. And of course, we have lots of opportunities, webinars of our own and webinars with friends and partners like AJOL. So, sign up for newsletters and join in the discussions and, help influence what we're focusing on next or should care about. And I'm just going to say a little bit about where our members are. I think at the very beginning, I said we've got about 20,000 members now from 152 countries. And these are the fastest growing countries. So not the biggest ones that we have. But as you can see, actually, for the last 5 years, Indonesia has been growing the fastest. And we're still seeing new membership from the US and the UK and, the countries we know that are publishing more, investing more in research. And we really want to see an African country on this list. I should say, I think you might have seen a glimpse of my spreadsheets as I was started the screen share, and that is looking at the members that we have in Africa. We have 150 members in Nigeria, so that's the largest member country we have in Africa. And of course, I think Ghana, South Africa and Kenya are probably the other largest ones. But we're seeing a lot more joining from Tanzania, from Sudan, from Ethiopia. So it's really encouraging. And we're here to support all of that growth. We have a program that we've called the GEM program, Global Equitable Membership, and that means that we are waiving fees both for membership and for content registration, not for some of the other services, but that main core service. And I want to first say that the only reason we need a fee waiver program is because our fees aren't correct. So in 2024, we are also revising our entire resourcing model because the fees were set 20 years ago and they were based around the membership of 20 years ago, which was lots of Western large societies and commercial companies. That is not the demographic of our membership anymore. We have a lot of Diamond OA journals with zero revenue. So our fee model, and our resourcing model needs to reflect that. But in the meantime, we have the Global Equitable Membership Programme, and you will not be surprised to know that many African countries are eligible, and there's about 30 listed here. But we have got the list of the numbers of current members who are taking us up on this. And as Kylie mentioned at the beginning, if you're hosted by and involved with AJOL, this is already covered. So and I would specifically mention, I'll go back to that one, that one of the reasons that we're partnering with AJOL is because they're not just enabling a sort of free service for DOIs through Crossref, they're also really supporting independent sustainability of journals across Africa. So that kind of incubation and support and education that AJOL offers is a really important service that journals can access. So yeah, this partnership is really important to us. And then a little plug, just to finish, for this new initiative called The Place, and this is for absolutely anybody. It is theplace.discourse.group, and it's a community forum that we've set up with some of these other organizations, kind of to pool our resources, and we'd love to get AJOL involved in that, and PKP and some others. But if you want some introductory questions answered about what are DOIs and what do we mean by research integrity, and how to conduct open peer review, things like that, then this is a place that isn't just about Crossref, but also about kind of journal publishing in general. So yeah, and I think we are going to end there with a very big thank you to Kylie and to the AJOL team for inviting Crossref to come and talk, and I hope that it's been useful. We'd love to hear your questions and look forward to talking. Thank you very much.
I had muted myself. Thank you so much, Ginny, and the Crossref team. That was amazing. We currently have just over 30 questions, most of which have been answered. Nobody panic. However, we have a question from David, who I think you've just spoken about this regarding the GEM. David would like to know, is there any waiver for new journals from developing countries when applying for a DOI through Crossref?
Yes. So when you say developing countries, we've had to do quite a lot of research about what the criteria is. And we've, in this first phase of the GEM program, the Equitable Membership Program, I think there's 59 countries, 30 in Africa. And they are pretty much based on the International Development Association, which is a part of the World Bank. But we talked to the World Bank and very quickly realized that their low income measure was not enough. It's not nuanced enough, because there are some countries that need support that are not low income, maybe a Caribbean island, for example. And there are also countries in the lower middle income tier that actually are very able to sustain and support Crossref membership, like India, for example. So yeah, I know there's always a question about, can't we waive more? Can't we have completely zero fees for everybody? And I would love that. But we can't do that. Yeah, but yeah, certainly if you let us know where you're based, then we can look at what the fees would be, if any.
Thank you very much, David. I think your next step is to contact Crossref. I have several questions from Apple, which I will answer. How would a journal who's just coming onto AJOL, whose DOI has been active already, i.e. is not an AJOL DOI, would AJOL activate such DOIs to Crossref? The short answer is no. We only activate DOIs which we assign. So the AJOL assigned DOIs are paid for and activated by AJOL to Crossref. If you have a DOI supplied by somebody else, they will continue doing that. However, this does not affect your AJOL membership. So even if you have a DOI that is not through AJOL, that doesn't we don't have anything to do with that DOI, but this does not affect your AJOL membership. We will still index you exactly as you would anybody else. So that is not an issue. However, you cannot have two DOIs. So you will need to decide whether you are staying with your current provider or moving to AJOL. It's probably better, Ginny will be able to tell me more about this. It's probably better to keep a DOI system that you already have than adopt a new one, right?
That's true, yes. You would never recreate DOIs for the same content, but what you could do is look at for DOIs going forward, keep the same prefix, but then anything new published, I mean, that's really for AJOL to answer if they would like to take over that job going forward. Certainly people move around between different agencies as well. So we get DOIs that have been registered with DataSite or Medra in like Italy and Spain. And there is a technical process for rehoming DOI prefixes, but it's a little unwieldy. But if you really want to do that, I'm sure we could have a conversation also with AJOL to see if they could take that forward, or we could try to as well.
Great stuff. We had a hand that was up, Mubashir, but he seems to have left, unfortunately, and I do not have a record of what his question was. I think that covers everything then. Thank you, Cora. I see you've been busy in the Q&A box answering questions about similarity checks and so on. So thank you for that. And I think that this is pretty much where we will wrap up. Last call for questions. If anybody has any questions, pop them into the Q&A box now. I think that we might, however, be wrapping up. Okay, to everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. We know that everybody, it's the end of the academic year. In some places, it is the middle of the academic year. In others, it is always chaos. If you're in academia, if I recall correctly, there is never a dull moment. So thank you so much for taking time out of your days to join us. Thank you to the Crossref team. You guys do amazing work, and you certainly make our lives much easier. And we are thrilled to be in partnership with you. And I'm hoping I heard an allusion to another webinar next year, so we will definitely be in touch. To everybody joining us among our journal editors and prospective editors, thank you so much. As we stated earlier, our recording of this will be available via our YouTube channel, and the slides will be sent out. And I think we will end it there. I will stop the recording now. Thank you so much, everybody, and have an excellent afternoon further.